Midday, Central Australia. No shade for miles. Ground temperature near 70 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to blister skin on contact. An Aboriginal tracker moves at a slow, deliberate pace, breathing only through the nose, sweat evaporating before it beads. He carries no water for the first 4 hours. His body already knows how to survive this. It has for 60,000 years. Every modern instinct says drink constantly, says heat is the enemy, says the body is fragile in front of the sun. But for most of human history, there was no bottle, no tap, no shade structure waiting at the end of a shift. Just skin, breath, and a nervous system that had already solved a problem modern hydration science is still catching up to. So how does a body survive hours in conditions that would drop an untrained person in 20 minutes? Here's what we're getting into. The internal engineering that makes this possible. The breathing trick that changes everything. And the walking pace that isn't laziness, it's the entire strategy. In 1964, a physiologist named Per Olaf Ostrand began publishing work on something called evaporative cooling efficiency, studying how the human body, among all land mammals, does something unusual. Most large animals regulate heat through panting, or simply enduring it. Humans do it through sweat. Roughly 2 to 4 million eccrine glands spread across the skin, more per square inch than almost any other primate. A resting human in extreme heat can produce up to 1.4 liters of sweat per hour. Each liter that evaporates pulls close to 580 kilocalories of heat off the skin. It is, functionally, a built-in refrigeration system running on water and airflow alone. But evaporation only works under specific conditions. Sweat that drips off the body, wasted, provides almost no cooling. Sweat that sits in humid, still air provides almost no cooling. The system only works when moisture lifts cleanly off the skin into dry, moving air, which is exactly the condition a desert offers: low humidity and constant wind across open ground. The Sahara, the Kalahari, the Australian outback aren't just survivable to a trained body. They are, chemically, close to ideal for the exact system humans evolved to run. So if sweat solves the heat problem, why not just drink more and sweat more? In the 1960s, researchers studying the sand people of the Kalahari Desert documented something that broke the assumption.
Trackers on long hunts in extreme heat restricted water intake deliberately during the hottest hours, not out of necessity, by choice. Drinking heavily mid-exertion in extreme heat diverts blood flow to the stomach for digestion and dilutes sodium levels in the blood, a condition now called hyponatremia, which can be more dangerous than mild dehydration itself. The trackers had never heard the term. They simply knew from generations of repetition when to drink in small amounts and when to wait. The body they carried could tolerate losing close to 10% of its total water weight through sweat before serious impairment, a threshold far higher than most modern guidelines assume is safe. Not because the danger wasn't real, because the body had spent millennia learning exactly where that line actually sits. To be fair, not every desert population shows identical tolerance. Some studies on hydration limits in extreme heat vary widely by fitness, by acclimatization, by age. So treat the numbers not as a universal rule for every body, but as evidence of a real and trainable physiological range, one modern life rarely asks anyone to develop. So what actually happens inside a body that spends weeks adapting to heat rather than avoiding it? The process is called heat acclimatization, and it moves in a fairly precise timeline. In the first few days of heavy heat exposure, the body sweats earlier and more heavily than before. By roughly day 7, sweat becomes measurably more dilute. The body starts conserving sodium rather than losing it. By 2 to 3 weeks, resting heart rate during heat exposure drops noticeably. Blood plasma volume expands, allowing more efficient cooling per heartbeat. A body fully acclimatized can sweat nearly twice as effectively as an unadapted one, while losing far less salt in the process. This is not a modern discovery built in a lab. It is a script the body has been running since before modern humans left Africa. Fossil and genetic evidence both point to early Homo sapiens adapting first in hot, open savanna environments, long before the migrations into colder climates, which competitors love to focus on. The cold weather body came later. The heat-adapted body came first. It's worth noting where the word perspire actually comes from. Latin, per, through, spirare, to breathe. To breathe through the skin itself. The Romans understood sweat as a kind of respiration, centuries before anyone measured a sweat gland. The engineering the tracker uses today, nose breathing, slow pacing, timed water intake, isn't folklore layered on top of biology. It is the biology made visible as behavior. So, what does the actual 4-hour walk look like from the inside? A tracker moving through 70-degree ground heat doesn't move fast. Fast movement generates additional metabolic heat on top of the environmental heat already pressing in, stacking one heat source on another. So the pace stays deliberately slow. A cadence researcher studying Aboriginal desert trackers in the 1980s described as metabolically conservative, minimizing internal heat production while maximizing the surface area exposed to moving air. The nose breathing matters too. Breathing through the mouth in dry heat increases water loss through the airway. Breathing through the nose filters and slightly humidifies incoming air before it reaches the lungs, reducing that loss by a measurable margin. None of this is instinctive in the sense of automatic. It's trained, refined, across a childhood of walking in exactly this heat until the nervous system stops treating 70-degree ground as an emergency and starts treating it as Tuesday. What if the modern fear of heat isn't protecting the body? What if it's disabling a system that was built to handle this? A body raised in air conditioning loses acclimatization within 2 to 3 weeks of avoiding heat entirely. The glands don't disappear. The sensitivity does. Modern hydration culture, constant sipping, water bottles as accessories, treats thirst as something to prevent rather than a signal the body evolved to interpret precisely. A hunter-gatherer body didn't fear the sensation of thirst. It read it the way a gauge gets read. Information, not alarm. The tracker walking 4 hours without water isn't ignoring his body. He's listening to it more closely than most modern people ever learn to. The body that blisters skin in 20 minutes without preparation isn't the default human body. It's an unacclimatized one, stripped of exposure, stripped of training, living almost entirely indoors. The 60,000-year-old system didn't vanish. It's sitting underneath the air conditioning, unused, like a muscle no one asked to work. You've probably felt a small version of this yourself. A few days into a heat wave, feeling somehow more used to it than the first day. Sweating earlier, tolerating more.
That's not toughness. That's the ancient system switching itself back on, responding to heat exactly the way it did for the trackers, exactly the way it did for the first humans who ever stood on hot, open ground under a merciless sun and didn't die. Competitors will tell you the story of survival is a story about the cold, about fire, about fur and shelter against the freeze. But the body was built for heat first. The cold weather adaptations came later, layered on top of a system already engineered for exactly this: blistering ground and a sun with no mercy in it. Somewhere in Central Australia right now, someone is walking, slowly, deliberately, breathing through the nose, carrying very little water across ground hot enough to blister skin on contact. Not because the heat isn't dangerous, because the body already has an answer to it. An answer written before language, before agriculture, before the first city ever needed shade. In 1964, a physiologist started measuring what desert bodies had already known for 60,000 years. The sweat glands are still there, millions.
Waiting. Under skin that spends most of its life somewhere cool, somewhere shaded, somewhere the ground never gets hot enough to remind the body what it was built to do.